Hi guys, it's Fazana. Welcome to my channel. If you want to add some thought-provoking books to your reading list, please keep watching. So today I'm going to talk about the top 5 books that I read in 2020. They're all non-fiction. So the books that I want to talk about today, the first book is The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferris. That book has been around for quite a while now and I've heard about it quite a lot. I only ended up reading it last year, even though I have a vague idea of what it's about. So the ideas that resonated with me most from the book was the idea of enjoying life as you're living it in the now, rather than waiting for the future, like when you retire, for example. And I think he talks about how he takes off a month for every 2 months that he works, and I really like the idea of that. And I think at some point in my life I'd love to be at a place where I can do that as well. Passive income and like diversifying my income is something I've been thinking about, and I think he just kind of propelled that in me and just got me thinking about different ways that I can achieve that for myself. There's a couple of things he said that I really liked. One was there's less competition for really big unrealistic goals, and it's actually a really good thing, because when you think about setting really unrealistic goals and you really strive high, you might not fully, even if you don't make the 100%, you'll probably make 80% of it, which would be bigger than your smaller, more realistic goals. So that's an idea I really liked from the book. And the other thing he talks about is, don't think what do I want, don't think what are my goals, think what excites me. And that's actually a really good way of thinking when you're trying to make a decision about your career or your life, and just thinking about what kind of stories you want to have in your life, what kind of things add value to your life, and just kind of following. When I say excitement, I'm not talking about like jumping off a plane or anything like that. It's more just in terms of your life experiences. You know, living abroad, is that something that you find exciting? Or maybe a career change, if that's something you're thinking about. If it's a toss-up between changing a career and a promotion, maybe that's a question you can ask yourself and kind of follow that path. It's kind of trying to overcome some of the fears that we have in our lives and just trying to kind of broaden our own horizons, and I really enjoyed that idea. The second book on my list is The Power of Now by Eckharte Tolle, and the reason I love that book is because it got me thinking differently about the present, the past and the future. So I'm going to paraphrase slightly because I can't remember the quote exactly. So the past, when you were living the past, you were in the present. When you will live the future, you'll be in the present. So the past and the future doesn't really exist. What you have is the now, the present. So just live in the now and in the moment, because your life is basically a series of present moments. The reason I actually really like that is because I am someone who overthinks. I ruminate, I worry about the future, I have a fair amount of like anxiousness around what can happen in any given situations. So it actually really stopped me in my tracks and got me thinking about, why am I worrying about something that doesn't really exist? You know, the past is kind of gone, it kind of doesn't exist anymore, and the future is something that yet doesn't exist. So really all I have is the now, and kind of just living in that. And I think, yeah, it's something that kind of really made me think and kind of physically stop myself from thinking about something that basically there isn't much point to. And that doesn't mean like go and do reckless things in the present, but I think it's more in terms of like overthinking and like thinking of various scenarios to try and make your life more full of anxiety, if that makes sense. The other idea that Tolle explores is that all pain that we have in our life is because we resist things that are beyond our control. So we are worrying about things and we're trying to control things, and we're trying to resist pain in our lives, and to just kind of let the pain pass through without judging, and kind of once it's passed through you, you're not kind of reliving it. And I quite like the idea of that as well, because sometimes some people live in denial in terms of if something's happened to them, or you're trying to kind of really fight back against something that you have no control over, and all that does is to kind of fill yourself with maybe anger, sadness, despair, rather than doing that, accepting situations and maybe then trying to see how you can live in the present now in the best way possible. The third book I want to talk about is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. This was recommended to me by a mentor, And the reason I like this book is because this is the first book or the first resource I saw talking about the separation of consciousness and being. So the idea is that your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical self is different to who you are. So you are the consciousness, you are basically like an inner energy. You're not your thoughts, you're not the feelings that the emotions that you're feeling, and you're not the physical self that you see in the mirror. You experience life with all of these things, but you're not that. So you are aware that you are separate from all of these things. Because you're aware that you're separate from all of these things, you don't judge yourself because of these things. You don't like look in the mirror and judge what the body looks like. You don't judge your thoughts, and you don't judge your emotions. You kind of notice it, you see it, and you accept it. It got me again thinking about judgment, about my inner critic, and also the fact that the inner critic isn't actually my own voice. It's most likely a voice, an external voice that we've all internalized. Maybe someone's criticized us at some point when we're growing up or whatever, and it's kind of something that you've internalized. And if it's not your own voice, why would you let it dictate you? Why would it let it run your life? Why would it let that voice stop you from doing the things that you want to do? So yeah, it got me to kind of quieten my inner critic quite a bit as well. I think the other thing that Michael talks about is about death and how death gives meaning to life. And so I think I read this somewhere else, that we're the only animals that know that someday we're going to die. So having that awareness means we try to give our lives meanings, be that through like children or contribution or some kind of growth. You know, we all try and find meaning in our life at some point or another. And it got me really thinking about, if I knew that I was going to die in a month, what are the things that I would focus on? How would that shift the focus of my life, and how would that shift the focus away from all of the pointless things maybe I'm doing that I'm not enjoying so much, and maybe all of the relationships in my life? How can I change kind of my perspective on life if I'm thinking about death and reflecting on it? So the fourth book I want to talk about is Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. It's slightly different to the other three books I talked about. So Talking to Strangers essentially is about how inherently we're very bad judge of people. Is inherently our ability to like judge what people are thinking, feeling, and how they're going to act is just completely wrong. And the reason we think those things is probably because we're very egotistical beings, and also just we like to think that we've got people figured out. Like, I know a lot of people will just say like, oh yeah, I'm a very good judge of characters. I don't think, after reading that book especially, I don't think that exists. I don't think that's a skill that you can have. So what Malcolm does is he looks at kind of 6 or 7 cases in the history, like criminal cases, most of them, and kind of breaks them down into where people have judged people or assumed certain things about the other person, and how that kind of plays out in the case, and how they were very wrong about it, basically. And it's so interesting how he tells the story, and it's so interesting to see how wrong the people were in the cases. One of the stories that he tells is about the British Prime Minister Chamberlain, who was sent to Germany at the time to go and suss out Hitler. And when he came back, he said, oh, Hitler's trustworthy. You know, looking back in hindsight, we're like, oh, how could he be so wrong? And actually, when Malcolm kind of tells this story, we really get a feel of why he said that, or why he thought that. So it's really interesting, and I think it got me thinking about how we judge people, how we think we know what other people are thinking, and how we judge other people's intentions without really knowing much about them at all. How much self-awareness do we even have about ourselves? So how can we say like we can, you know, say what Tom, Dick and Harry are thinking? Like it doesn't make any sense, because it then got me thinking about how many articles there are on the internet about dating, for example, and body language, or interviews as well. A good friend of mine, she was telling me, well, her and her boyfriend were telling me this story about their first date, how he had actually thought their date wasn't going well at all, because she had her arms crossed the whole time. So he thought she wasn't interested at all, whereas she said, oh, that was because I was cold. So it's just so funny how we read into things when actually we have no idea how that person perceives life, what their outlook on life is, what their lived experience is, and how their lived experience have made them who they are, rather than kind of what we think that they might be based on our lived experiences. So yeah, it's a really interesting book. It's something I think I would keep in my bookshelf and I would go back and read again. Last but not least, I want to talk about Ryan Holiday's Ego is the Enemy. I read this book last year because I started thinking about how there were certain decisions I was making in my life. There were certain things I was approaching in certain ways because I felt that it was being driven by my ego somewhat. I mean, we all have egos. It's how we kind of deal with it and how we kind of keep it in perspective, I guess, is what's important. So there are 3 ideas that I quite liked from Ego is the Enemy. First being, so Ryan talks about don't be passionate, be purposeful. So his view is that passion is something that shows impatience and it shows lack of persistence, whereas purpose is a lot more disciplined. And I completely agree with that, actually, because there'll be lots of projects that I started previously in my life where passion kind of took over and I was like really interested in it, and then it kind of burnt out. So I kind of didn't follow it through, whereas as I've been living a bit more like purposeful and meaningful life, I've been a bit more slower in doing things, but it's meant that I've kept on persisting and I've kept on kind of following through with it. And I will talk a bit more about that when I talk about my fitness journey later on, and I can talk more about how that's bore more fruits for me, and it's been a lot more kind of consistent with the outcomes that it's shown as well. So the second thing I quite liked from Ego is the Enemy is the idea of always being a student. I am an avid kind of believer in learning, kind of being a lifelong journey, if you will. It never stops. We need to keep learning. And he talks about how if we think we know everything, we'll never look to learn again. We'll never kind of look at improving things, and you'll be humbled by that as well. So if you think you know everything, you'll kind of, there'll be your inner ego kind of coming out and being maybe disrespectful to others and kind of cancelling others, whereas if you're humble and you think, yes, I know certain things, there are lots more that I can learn, you'll be a lot more humble in your kind of approach to life and to others and also to yourself, and you'll always keep improving yourself as well. Your skills will keep getting better. You as a person will become more self-aware and more knowledgeable and gain wisdom through that as well. So the third thing he also talked about is why you're running the rat race. What is it that you're running after and why are you doing it? So if it's ego driven, so for example, if you're looking at your promotion as from a status anxiety point of view, or running after it because you want more money without real purpose attached to it, it's not gonna fulfill you. You're not gonna feel fulfilled by it. You're not gonna feel you're not gonna get any meaning from it, and therefore your life will kind of seem it will seem kind of pointless. So it resonated with me because I started thinking about the day-to-day things that we do, and if we don't attach meaning to it, it then becomes a bigger thing of doing things just because we do them, rather than attaching meaning and purpose to them. So I guess those are the 3 things that I really took away from the Ego is the Enemy. It's a short read, but there's so many more things that I could have talked about today, but gotta keep this video short. So let me know if you've enjoyed my videos, and let me know if you want to hear more about the things that I read, and I'd love to hear recommendations from you. So please do comment in the comment boxes below and let me know if there's anything that you've read that resonated to you in a similar way, and also just leave your thoughts on what you thought of the books that I shared. Thanks for watching, guys. Please do like, share, comment and subscribe. Thanks very much. Bye.